Our guest this week is Lee Mather, who's the Senior Creative Director of Cod Masters in Birmingham. It is lovely to have you here. Thank you so much. I'm desperate to talk to you about the Formula One game. Maybe we can kind of kick off with that, actually. F1 24, it's about to come out.
Yeah, at the end of this month.
And it's your baby, isn't it?
It is. It's been my baby for quite a while, and it's on those things that, like, I've always loved Formula One, so being able to work on the Formula One game is amazing. But this time of year is the best time of year for me because, we're reaching the point where we finally get to show people what we've been doing this year, what the team have been working on, and get that feedback from the players.
And how does it work? How does the process work of creating a game like that?
So because it's an annual franchise, we have a really significant team that we split into two parts. So we've always got one team working on the current game, so the 24 title, and then we've got a smaller team who are working ahead on what we're going to be doing next. We've got a fairly significant roadmap for the sort of features that we want to bring in the next few years as well.
Can I ask you about that roadmap? An interesting use of the word road. I'm intrigued to know how you creatively, how you refresh it. Because I mean, I've been into your games, by which I mean Cod Masters, because you're EA, aren't you? But you still are Cod Masters. Am I right? Did the first Cod Masters game come out was it the Grand Prix Sim 1987?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a small child, Cod Masters were around creating games on Spectrum and Commodore 64, and they did an F1 title all the way back then.
I was there.
We were also small children then as well.
87, I would have been, 18 maybe? Something like that. Ever since then, doing this thing, not always year on year, but now year on year, being creative, thinking how to engage the gaming consumers into buying a brand new upgrade on a 12-monthly basis, that's quite challenging. So first of all, what new things can we expect from F1 24 and how do you plan that roadmap?
Yeah, so new in 24, the driver career. So we've got an entirely new driver career. It's like the absolute core of the game. It's a real sort of love letter to the fans. It's that authenticity and the sort of the representation of the sport.
That's a good marketing line, isn't it?
Yeah.
Love letter to the fans.
It's something we don't do very often, the driver career. So basically, when we did the first title in 2010, the career part of it was one of the most popular and successful parts of the game because it represents the sport. And then in 2016, we did a new version of the driver career. And then this is the biggest refresh we've done. So we don't do that very often, but it is the absolute core of the game. It's the opportunity to play as a Formula One driver, an F2 driver, one of the icons, so a classic driver, and immerse yourself in the world of Formula One.
One of the 20, you call it, don't you?
Yes.
So the career path, so what exactly does that mean?
In the game, the context is you can go in as a Formula One driver and you'll start your career in the position that Formula One driver is in the real sport. You can go in as a Formula 2 driver, so you come through the ranks of Formula 2 into Formula 1. Or you can go in as yourself, as an avatar, where you would start out either in Formula 2 or in Formula 1. And you can choose to go in, obviously, with one of the top teams, and your goals and targets will be win races, win championships. Or you can go in at one of the sort of teams further back on the grid, and your goals then will be develop the car, develop the team, and work your way up to a winning position.
Can I just ask another question?
She's on board, you've sold it. She's getting it on her laptop.
No, it's just this. It's just because the whole model of Formula One has changed in the last few years since Liberty came in, and we all know, it's grown so much, particularly in the United States. Have you had a knock-on of that as well? Have you noticed any difference?
Significantly, yeah. So when we first started working on Formula One, the market was very different, the audience was very different. Obviously, Drive to Survive made a massive difference as well, especially in North America. We've got a very different audience now, but they're also coming in through different routes. So if you look at when Liberty took over, they added the ability for the drivers to suddenly have more visibility on socials. So now you get great socials. A lot of the drivers have got their own YouTube channels. It's really like an opportunity for people to be closer to the drivers.
I wanted to ask you about that because I was on the old YouTube and I saw Lando Norris from the McLaren team, and I don't know if it was his channel or someone had just, got him on board, but he was playing the new F1 24, and he definitely got his seal of approval. It was a great video. I really encourage anyone to watch that, actually. But yeah, so he's a big figure on social media, isn't he? I think isn't he one of your kind of crowd?
I've interviewed Lando a few times because he's a big MotoGP fan.
Right,
he's always been obsessed with Valentino Rossi. He's like worn all the merch.
Really?
Absolute full kit. He's been obsessed. But it's brilliant now. He's obviously won a race, but he's got a great sense of humour, and obviously he's British, so it's fantastic for us, isn't it?
Yeah, Lando's brilliant. He's done the Lando's plays a few times now where he's played our games, and he's obviously got his own brand out there with Quantum and his own channel. So a lot of the drivers are seeing that as a great opportunity as well. Like Max Verstappen Verstappen, who we work really closely with. He does his Red Line, which is the esports team that he races with and is part of. So the younger drivers have got a much better view of gaming as well. So that connection that we get between gaming and the sport is so valuable.
Obviously, I want to ask you about esports. We actually had an episode on this show recently where we talked about esports, and it's very, very close to my heart when my son is in that whole world. What's going on with the esports thing, and how does that affect you developing a new title like F1 24?
Yeah, so we build a really thorough online multiplayer mode in the game, and obviously that lends itself well to esports. So we did our first official F1 esports in 2017, and we did that with Formula One officially. We did it in Abu Dhabi. We did the finals there. It was amazing. We were in a garage, and we've done it every year since. We even did it remotely during lockdowns, and then this year it's just concluded, the official F1 Sim Racing Championship. And Freddie Rasmussen won this year. He's been part of the championship for many years. It's his first win for the Red Bull team.
That's something we talked about on the Gadget show back in the day, about how could a sim make you? Could you be able to drive a real car?
Then, Suze.
I know it was fantasy then. It's incredible.
I mean, it's important to make this point, isn't it? Because it's kind of expected now, isn't it? Because there's even a movie, isn't there, about Gran Turismo and the journey of one youngster to the real world of motor racing. But you're right, back in the Gadget Show days, that was a kind of novel idea, wasn't it? Let's test this scenario.
Now it's real. Now it's happening. F1 24 then, where does it sit in terms of, so the professional teams that have these incredible simulators, which the drivers tend to hate, but there's loads of data they can pull from. And also, if there's a new track that they haven't been able to drive, then, it's a good way in for them to learn the track. Where does it sit in terms of simulator and the game? Is it a simulator? Is it a game? How closely do they correspond?
Yeah, so something that we've always set out to do is achieve a representation of driving a Formula One car. Obviously, it's got to be driven on a controller. It's also got to be driven on a wheel and pedal. So you've got to take that into account. But when you consider that a Formula One driver and a Formula One sim is designed to give feedback and validate data when setting up a car, what we're trying to do is replicate the driving experience so players get to feel like they're a Formula One driver. So we work very closely with the teams to get the data and share the data with the teams to ensure that our cars achieve their lap times in the same way as a Formula One car. So we want players to be able to feel like they're a Formula One driver. So we simulate all of the elements, and 24 this year, one of the biggest updates is actually in the physics, and we've changed the way that we model the suspension. So we've got what's termed suspension kinematics, so the geometry changes and the contact patch of the tyre changes when it touches the track surface, and that allows for things like the anti-dive and the anti-squat. So all of the things that Formula One teams model into their cars to ensure that the aero is consistent and a stable platform, we build that into the model.
It's amazing because it is effectively all down to the tyre and the contact patch, like you said. I mean, everything is about that contact patch, isn't it? The whole of the car or bike or whatever is affected by what's coming from that tyre and the feeling they're getting from that.
That's what Lando Norris, in that video I watched, that's what he was talking about. And he was adjusting all the downforce and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I'm fascinated by this. I can tell you a little story that when I first met my wife, she came back eventually to my flat, and she came in, and I think she was quite horrified by what I'd assembled in the front room in the lounge, because as a bachelor, it never occurred to me that it was weird. And I had this, it's not like a dominatrix type thing.
I know, I don't know where you're going with it. Yeah, we're worried.
And I had the fully hydraulic flight simulator rig, which I'd cobbled together, and I had multiple computers and multiple monitors, because back then, to have multiple screens for that wraparound effect and the multifunction displays and things on it would have been Microsoft Flight Simulator or X-Plane. You actually had to have separate computers for each monitor, and then a bit of an Ethernet cable and some software.
Are you going back to the late 90s, are you?
It would have been probably 99, 2000 maybe. Even then, I understood the way that it was going and how technical and scientific it was. But the level it's at now is absolutely extraordinary. And the money that people are spending, what sort of money for one of those, hydraulic steering wheels and a seat to go with it? What sort of money are we looking at?
So, I mean, that's an area that's really accelerated in recent years. When we first started, we didn't see a huge amount of wheel users, but now it's a lot more. And I think that's because the range is so expanded. Fanatec came into the market and they really kicked things up, where previously it was either sort of bungee cord wheels or geared wheels, belt-driven wheels, and they came out with a consumer-level direct drive wheel, which you could buy for around £1,000. Previously you were in for £4,000 or £5,000 if you want a direct drive wheel. Now all of the wheel manufacturers are in that space, and then there's the likes of Playseat and Next Level Racing and multiple others that create full race rigs as well. You can get ones that are so convenient you can fold them up when you bring your girlfriend back at the weekend and you don't want to look like you've
I think
got
it put her off a bit, Suze.
Yeah, I hide
She's
mine
still
under
with
the
you,
stairs.
mate.
Yeah.
So
Hide mine under the stairs.
So it folds up and it hides under the stairs when I've got
Nice.
guests coming around, so I don't
Yeah.
look too dodgy. But but then you can get full rigs that are full motion as well, and there's I think it's the F1. There's an Authentics range that goes up like £100,000. You know, they're insane. They're absolutely incredible, and it's a partially cut up chassis of a Formula One car. You know, and it's just there's something incredible things.
There is incredible obsession out there, isn't there? When you're developing the game, do you get, or who does anyone get the physical experience of being in a Formula One car? Because I know they're fiercely defensive of letting anybody in those cars. So have you ever sat in a car? Have you ever been in a Formula One car?
So I've never been in a Formula One car. I've driven one of the team simulators, which is again really rare. They don't.
So is that the closest you get to experiencing it? Then?
To being in a real Formula One car, yes. I've been lucky enough to drive other formulas, other single-seater formulas, and I've been a passenger in a Formula 3000 car at Donington, which was incredible. And I've got to drive sort of Formula 3000 cars, Formula 4 cars, but they're just light years away from what a Formula One car can do.
How close was that official team simulator, to what you're offering customers in this year's game?
So it was really close, to be fair. So I jumped in. I think it was a good few years ago, and it was Korea race weekend, and I was able to jump in. And they put you in headphones, they put you in a helmet, they put you in a race suit. They didn't attach the cords because they have cords to allow the driver to work their neck while they're in the simulator. I didn't have those because they said my poor little neck wouldn't cope. So I jumped in. I did Korea. They said leave it in start mode. There was a switch on the wheel. You don't need all the power. I did a lap, and they said, actually, you're doing okay. Give yourself full power. And it was so relatable. I was instantly able to jump into a Formula One simulator and relate what I'd learnt in the game.
I mean, if it was up to me, based on my own experience of watching F1 with my dad, which I used to love in the 80s. I know you can't drive the John Player Special, but there are some historic drivers, if I'm not mistaken, in the new title.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's something that with the new driver career as well, it's interesting to see that you'll be able to have the icons in there. So you could pair Max Verstappen with Michael Schumacher or Ayrton Senna.
Nigel Mansell.
Or I was just going to say, or our Nige.
You could have our Nige.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you can.
And we've got Nige from 92 as well. So it's in his prime with the moustache. And it's brilliant realisation of the character.
I think what's interesting about this is it's quite an emotional sport. Like, I think, your relationship with this, I'm just talking about my dad and being able to, connect to the sport through that kind of relationship. That's what you've got quite a lot of responsibility in your hands, haven't you, really?
It's funny you say that, because the audience originally, a lot of people came to Formula One through connections with their family, with their parents, with friends. And now modern F1, it's also that, but also it's people coming in through Drive to Survive and through the drivers' socials, and the drivers being the characters themselves. I mean, you mentioned how much Lando loves Valentino Rossi. Now, he's transcended the sport of MotoGP because everybody knows who Valentino Rossi is, and it's becoming that way with Formula One drivers. Everybody knows who Lewis Hamilton is. Everybody knows who Max Verstappen is. Lando's a real character. Charles Leclerc's really famous. George Russell. These people they've come into the public consciousness now. They're not just drivers in a sport that somebody's maybe not interested in. They're celebrities, and they're famous in their own right.
The 80s, wasn't it?
It's because they had
and the 70s.
They were allowed to bring their characters out then, and then the whole sponsorship thing came in and it flattened everything. And Bernie, to a certain degree as well, I think did flatten that. And now my favourite driver for personality and taking the mick out of himself is Valtteri Bottas. He's done some fantastic things online. I mean, he's wonderful, and he's great for the sport, and that's what it needs. It needs those characters, because they were squashed for a long time. Yeah. Can I ask you about the root of the data? I don't want to be boring, but I'm just interested in the fact that you can't go out there and drive the Formula One car, but the amount of data that's harvested that goes into their simulator. Can you explain where you get your data from to make it so realistic?
So we've got a guy on the handling team who's an engineer. His entire career has always been in mechanical engineering. So he takes the rule set and builds a Formula One car to the rules, as the real teams do. and then he will then look at all of the data that's publicly available on Formula One cars and the lap times they produce and how they produce them, and he'll build a model that's as close as we can get. We then share it with the teams, the certain teams who we work really, really closely with. They will play the game, and our game outputs a lot of data through UDP, and you can log that data, and they will log that data, and they'll compare it to a trace from the real car at that circuit from the previous year or the current year, depending on when the race took place. and they will point us in the right direction. So they'll say, well, maybe your braking distances are a little bit long, or your cornering speeds are too high. They wouldn't be generating that kind of downforce through there, and that's what allows us to balance it against the real cars.
And are you actually getting feedback from real Formula One drivers as well?
Drivers and engineers, yes.
That's amazing, isn't it? And just flying the Midlands flag for a minute, because Code Masters is based in the Midlands, isn't it? So, we're neighbours. We're practically neighbours.
Yeah, definitely. The head office was in Warwickshire, still in Warwickshire, and the F1 studio is predominantly based out of the centre of Birmingham, and we've been here since mid-90s.
I love it.
It's kept its DNA then, hasn't it, really? Even though it's under the umbrella of EA Sports, Code Masters is the racing fraternity, isn't it?
It is. I mean, before we were a part of EA, one of the things that we did was we doubled down on racing. That was the big thing. We knew that Code Masters were known for their racing titles, and that's what we were best at. And that's during the era of obviously Colin McRae Rally. And
I was going to say, you're still flying the flag, but you've come a long way from BMX Simulator in 1986, TOCA. I remember Colin McRae, and of course, the awesome Micro Machines. That's what Code Masters will always be for me. That and the Darling Brothers. That part of gaming is solid gold. It's extraordinary to think you're still going and you're still absolutely smashing it.
Yeah. Code Masters are one of the originals. They were absolute originators in the industry. They did some groundbreaking things. Micro Machines was incredible, and to still be around today and still have the same studio. I mean, if you go to the head office in Warwickshire, it used to be a farmhouse. It's now a huge campus which caters to people with a gym and football pitch. It's grown, but it's still the same DNA.
The Gadget Show podcast is very, very similar.
Yeah, we need that.
Yeah, we've got a gym, haven't we? And I say that we've got a. There's a dumbbell in the corner.
An empty warehouse.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, on a day-to-day basis, what is your role then?
My role at the moment is very much looking forward to what the next thing is that we're going to be doing. So I have a close connection to what the current development team's doing on both years. I obviously oversee the design teams, so what the designs are, what they're producing there, what the features are going to be, why they're going to be exciting, why players are going to find them fun, why they're going to be engaging, and then, very much like, what are we doing next?
I was going to say, how far ahead do you have to look?
We generally sort of look in vaguely 5 years, but more fixed sort of 3 to 4.
Gosh.
So hover cars for the next one then, yeah?
If that's what arrives in the sport, then then we'll be moving towards hover cars.
Lee, obviously the gaming industry is massive. You hear loads of kids, don't you, wanting to get into that industry. So what kind of roles are there available, and what would your advice be on anybody that would want to come in?
Yeah, I mean, that's changed significantly from when I started out in QA back in the early 90s. But now there's so many real official courses that you can take to get into the industry that focus on all of the different disciplines. And I mean, keeping it regional, both Staffordshire and Coventry have got brilliant programs in game design and multiple other disciplines as well. But yeah, there's so many different roles that you can come into the industry with. A strong one is always to come in QA, because you learn so much working in the quality control department. You touch so many other areas of the business, and you get to really understand how a game's developed. Obviously, we have design, we have technical design that do things like they build the tracks, the AI lines for the cars in our game. We have the teams who actually build the circuits, build the cars. So we have art resource. We have people who obviously program the game. We have physics coders. We have AI coders. We have people who do the visual effects. We have people who do the audio. And then obviously there's the entire supporting cast of all of the people who bring the game to market and promote it. And, it's a huge, huge industry.
Wow.
Well, the game's out now, so, best of luck with it. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really fascinating, hasn't it?
It's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Lee.
I want to go and play it.
Thank you.
I'm super inspired to play it.